So, we're joined by Khalil Madovi, a brilliant creative, our guest editor for The Detail. So, bearing that in mind, what does being black and British mean to you?
Being black and British, to me, it's an interesting one because it's something that I take a lot of pride in, but it's also something that I have a lot of conflict with because, you know, I'm of Zimbabwean and Jamaican heritage. And stories I've heard, even from my grandparents and stuff, of Britain's relationship with those countries don't bring pleasant things to mind, don't bring warming thoughts to mind. Yet so many memories and stories, like from my childhood, from the type of like school experience I've had, from the type of experience I've had like growing up as a black kid that loves football in this country, are like so deeply ingrained in who I am and deeply ingrained in so much of what I love about myself that it's like there's this super interesting like conflict where it's like I love so much of being black and being British, but then there's also so much pain, hurt, tension in being black and being British. So yeah, it's one of those things that there's a bit of a paradox to it, a bit of a conflict there. But yeah, it's so many layers and dynamics to it, you know.
Because leading with that, we have some form of like Americanized lens, whereas like being black, it's like the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King, for example.
Yeah.
But as we know, being black and British is an exclusive experience. With your experience working on the 4 O'Clock Club, sort of, was that a pivotal moment? Like, how did that represent sort of to be black and British? How did that experience represent that?
I think in real time, I wasn't mindful of just what it meant or how significant it would be. I don't think any of us were.
How could it slip her attention that every single day I only just miss a suspension? An hour after school for me is a convention. Call me by my AKA, Mr. Detention. No punishment where you don't see me. What's school without the 4 OCC? It took the show becoming successful meaning so much to so many kids for so many years. Like what the show ran for almost a decade. And it's not until I'd kind of left the show and matured a little bit that I understood just how much of a cultural anchor it was for a lot of black Brits that are now young adults. And because I was a young teen at the time of doing it, and the people that were watching it were either my age or younger, so let's say between the ages of like 10 and 13, at the time I wouldn't really deep the fact that right now this is a moment in someone's childhood that once they become to be 20 to 24 now, it's going to be a huge part of their identity and the things that are warming memories for them. It's funny in a way because I never anticipated that like I would be able to say that I was a huge part of like British culture in that way. I've like had ambitions to be so in a long time because I care about culture and informing it and pushing it forward and stuff. But to say I was a part of British culture in a way that is a part of people's childhoods and is a significant part of how people identify themselves, it's still something that I'm still learning from today with conversations I have with people, things that people say whenever they meet me and stuff like that. So all in all, it's something that I'm just I see it as a huge privilege, and it motivates me to continue to work on important things that can give people similar feelings and that can help people navigate their black Britishness as well. Yeah.
Because you sort of mentioned it, but I guess now it's a retrospective and an introspective sort of process for you. So bearing that in mind, sort of overall, because obviously you're doing different things. So how is this sort of, with that in mind, how's that affected you in this sort of creative industry?
It's interesting because it's obviously, first of all, given me a wealth of experience. It's put me in a bunch of mad situations, in a good way and in other ways as well. It's put me in loads of different situations. It's put me in loads of different rooms with loads of different types of people at all levels and walks of life, right? And ultimately, those are things that help me navigate the positions I'm in now. And as far as it relating more specifically to like being an artist, being a creator, I think it's also set a standard for me from a very early age. I'm used to a certain level of work. I'm used to a certain level of work ethic, of expectation, and it helps me, you know, also be resourceful within that, because I've been able to see how, you know, sort of Olympic level creative processes run. So that even when, you know, I'm in situations or positions where we may not have so much resource, I'm still blessed with the understanding to be able to maximize on limited situations or limited things, which again just helps me wherever I can push culture and elevate whatever that facet of creativity and culture I'm working on.
And the BAFTA goes to Khalil Madovi for 4 O'Clock Club.
I do think sort of the Black and British experience, as you just sort of mentioned, it does tailor into the fact of we have to make a lot out of little opportunities. So when you said about resourceful from a young age, taken with your sort of wealth of experience, obviously longevity wise, you've had to operate from a different sort of perspective from a young age. But did you always know that you'd be in the performative industry?
Yeah, slightly. I think so. Like as a kid, I don't know, I grew up with a certain desire to always, I want to be famous, I want to, as a lot of kids doing it. I want to be on TV, I want to be in films, I want to play football, I want to play basketball. I just always wanted to be the guy, for whatever reason. And so, yeah, everything, as I grew older, even like as a kid, as I was growing older, the things I was sort of involving myself in were definitely to help me get towards that point. Defo didn't expect it to take the route it took so early on, and for me to get so deep into certain things so early on, but super grateful that it did, because for the ambitions I do have and for where I do want to take things, I think it was very important that I had certain experiences and certain understandings from an early age to inform, you know, the steps I take now, and to allow me to learn bigger lessons now for the steps I might take in a year or two or whatever, you know.
Because sort of the route that I guess you've gone down on your journey, the path that has been laid for you, you've sort of experienced, I guess, situations, scenarios and experiences before, you know, people at different ages. Maybe people, you know, went to study at 18, for example. So those years you had, you know, in your early teens, your experience and perspective is different. So taken from those experiences and now transitioning into an environment like CSM, like tell me about that journey, tell me about that transitions. How are we here today?
Yeah, with CSM and transitioning to that, I think I was fortunate enough from a very early age, again, to know that no matter what, you can have your BAFTA at 15 years old, but you're still going to uni, my guy. Like, that was my parents' whole precedent. Like, it doesn't matter what happens, we're still patterning the academics first, so that, you know, you have that safety net. And I think, like, another part of Black Britishness is, you know, with a lot of our families having come here from elsewhere, it's like, yo, we need to make sure that you're safe and that you're patterned. So we're going to encourage you to go down certain academic or career paths, right? Just because we care and we want you to be okay, because things are hard for us. So if you do X, Y, Z, it might be easier for you. That's where that sentiment generally comes from, right? For me, I was fortunate enough to grow up around a lot of people that were becoming doctors and lawyers and all that lovely stuff from an early age, to where it weirdly, it seemed like the norm. Like, it didn't seem like an achievement. So me wanting to be the guy again from a kid, I was like, oh, that's not an achievement. Even though I was very heavily academic, I was like, I want to do something that feels like more, or that feels just different. So that mindset, coupled with when I began to learn what my true passions were and what I wanted to devote my life to, this is around the ages of like 11, 12, just before 4 O'Clock Club happened.
Okay.
I knew that, like, creativity and the arts was something that
was going to be the thing that I wanted to devote myself to. Because again, even though I was very heavily academic, I was also very good at art. I was also very good at music, obviously acting. So the arts had a huge presence in my life as well. And so it got to a stage where I then knew that music was like my primary creative love. And a lot of my favorite music artists, I clocked had an art school background of some sort. So it was like, okay, when I'm now thinking of, to bring it all the way back around, when I'm now thinking of what I'm going to do at uni, because I don't want to do a particularly academic subject per se, it was like, okay, let me do an art degree. Let me go to art school, because yeah, I could do a music degree. I could do like a music production or music tech degree, but I figured out that a lot of the value that those courses have to offer, I don't have to find. They're not exclusively found in a degree context. They can be found through relationships I already had, the relationships I was confident I would develop. Whereas learning about creativity itself in an art degree, I thought would be very valuable to me. And if I'm going to go to uni for something, then the opportunity is there to do that. So initially I was going to do fine art at Oxford, because again, very heavily academic. I was attending, a lot of my life I've been privileged to attend some of the best schools wherever I've lived. So, you know, I went to Manchester Grammar School for high school and for sixth form. And if you're going there, standard is Oxbridge, like uni situations, that's the only two you're really looking at for whatever you want to do. So that was my compromise. I was like, okay, I'm going to do a creative degree, but just to make my parents and everyone at church happy, which doesn't matter, I'll go to Oxford and do fine art.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I just about didn't get the grades, so I couldn't go there.
Thankfully.
Yeah. But either way, whether I was going to go to Oxford or not, I did my foundation degree at Central St. Martin's. And from I did that, I knew that the style of teaching there was super valuable to the learning style that I have and the type of creativity I wanted to look at. Because with art and arts education in this country, it's really techie, because I believe the style in which it's taught in a lot of institutions doesn't lend itself to people developing a passion for it. They can develop skill, they can develop knowledge, but actually keeping their passion for it is a bit different. Whereas Central St. Martin's, they have a very practice-based approach to how they teach on their fine art degree, rather than it just being like skills or knowledge based. So you can literally go in there, bake cupcakes, and as long as you can talk about it from a certain perspective, that is fine art. Which was super useful for me as a music guy, being in art school, because it meant that everything was about the creativity, the ideas first, rather than the output. And again, whilst I say music is creatively my first love, a lot of people know me for my acting. I love filmmaking. I'm into all these different forms of storytelling. So it's all about the idea. It's all about the story first. So the fact that CSM taught that way really suited me. And yeah, glad to have graduated there, man. And it's taught me a lot of valuable things in terms of the approach and the ideas when it comes to, you know, music for now.
And to be honest, I often believe that creativity is boundless. So taking a leaf at, let's say, pioneers, so like, I'm just gonna name Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, Jamie Foxx, Beyonce, Idris Elba, for example. As you can see, they've all dabbled in different industries. So that's why I always say creativity is boundless.
100%.
So taken into your own perspective and what it means to be black and British, what inspires or who inspires you to keep operating in different spaces? Because I know it's not an easy process.
Yeah. I think the first person I have to give flowers to, because I feel like he's a trailblazer, but we don't give him enough credit, is a musician and actor called Ashley Thomas. He goes by the name Bashi.
Yeah.
When it comes to this music and acting thing, now that Top Boy exists, it's very easy for us to imagine, right? But in a time where it wasn't, he was definitely one of the British figures that I think painted a picture of what that can look like when it's done well for a British music artist. Because, like, you know, historically we've had Will Smith. Do you know what I mean? We've had all these American figures that can show a version of that model, But I think Ashley Thomas, for me anyway, was the first person to show it consistently at a certain level. Obviously Ashley Waters as well. Those guys, I'd say. I'd also say Labyrinth, in terms of, I guess that's a more music focused example to give, but in terms of being a producer, artist, composer,
it's like soundscapes.
Yeah, exactly. You know, he's done a lot of, he's made really cool transitions into the obviously TV and film industry now, with the amazing stuff he's done with Euphoria, and I think he's a key reference for me in terms of using music as your creative tool of choice or weapon of choice, and not being afraid to take it wherever and do whatever with it. Even what he represents as a music artist to me is very much tied to that, and that's a huge part of my identity. And yeah, I found that in a Black British artist. I didn't find that in a Black American artist first. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I think those are my sort of key reference points for that. Yeah.
And sort of lastly, I would say that big names, big stages, you've worked with a few names. And obviously, as I said, it's a retrospective and introspective process for you. So, Khalil's on the set of Ready Player One. He can visually maybe see Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, man.
So when it comes to sort of imposter syndrome, because traditionally being Black and British, it's very difficult to gain access to those spaces. Did you have some form of imposter syndrome, like sense of belonging, etc.? And how does this affect you today?
The craziest thing with that is, to answer this question, I have to talk about exploitation. For me to do what I want to do in life with creativity, I believe that part of the process is exploiting celebrity, right? Gaining a certain level of celebrity or whatever, and then using the leverage that gives you to maybe do things that are more impactful than just being a star or whatever. And with the arts, with the industry, with the creative industries, even with me like being in CSM, like I always had really good grades when I was there. And there was a point where I was like, yo, am I like this good, or are they just giving grades to the Black kid so the Black kid can be here and be present, and like there's a tokenism thing that's going on. And that definitely happens within the acting industry. Like people will get cast for things just to tick a box. It's not necessarily who's best at the job. It's just to tick a box. It's just so that a production can have a certain makeup, a certain social currency, a certain social value or whatever. So with the Ready Player One situation, sometimes that was kind of I felt like it's to do with the way it came about as well. Because when I went to the audition, it was for like a Disney film. And they were like, oh, can we also get you to read for this other Spielberg thing? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then I obviously got the job, and it was very quick how it happened. So it seemed like, yeah, they just want to bung a Black kid into the situation so that we can be representative and inclusive. Whether it was that or not, I can't speak on behalf of the production company. That was just my perception of it. But either way, whether it was a tokenism thing or not, I was in the room. I was there. So when it came to feelings of imposter syndrome in terms of being on this big production, working with one of the most legendary directors of all time, I didn't really focus on it too much, because it was like, regardless of what the situation looks like, or whether I feel like I'm supposed to be here or not, I'm here. So I'm going to make the most of it, and I'm going to exploit it so that it becomes a situation that can give me leverage and open doors or serve me in the future. How I feel about whether I should be here or not is not productive and doesn't matter. So I think naturally, creative people, we all have ego in it. So naturally, like you're going to be having those conversations with yourself. You're going to have to fight that part of yourself. But very early on, I knew how I felt about it, and I knew that this is a situation that it's great to be a part of. Let's focus on that. And I'm here, so there's nothing to even question. So yeah.
The proof is in the pudding, and for me, I always think that literally, if someone is in a certain place and I can visually see it, hold on a minute, that's sort of the proof that it exists. So taken into that situation, I understand what you're saying completely.
100%,
But yeah, thanks for your time.
Thank you so much for having me,
and we look
man.
forward to your guest edit in the detail soon.
Yes, I can't wait to get into
Thanks.
it. Thank you.